wonderful with the Telstra and the ADSL today, so an NBN. So I hope this works. So if it doesn't, I'll do my best. So we're going to start on smartphone photography. And I was very lucky. 2 years ago, I went on a cruise ship, and a lady called Jo Bradford, who's written a book on smartphone photography, gave a series of lectures. And I've got the details of her book later on if you're interested. But some of this today is part of her her presentation in her book. And if you want more, then you can buy her book, which costs $27. So here we go. Now, does anyone know where this photo is? This is Lucinda Park at Palm Beach. And for those who don't know, this is a very famous site in Australia. This is where Sir Edmund Barton and Samuel Griffith, who was then the Premier of Queensland, wrote the basis of the Constitution of Australia on board the paddle steamer Lucinda. So we'll just throw that in to show you what sort of beautiful photos you can take. So as you know, the best camera is the one you have with you. And I don't know who said that, but I've known before in my life, if you say in Africa and an animal comes leaping out of the bush, then there's no sense in getting out your big camera with the telephoto lenses. If you've got a small camera readily available, you point and shoot. But if you've got time and you've got a tripod, then you can settle down and take some decent photos. And we'll be talking about tripods in a minute. So here we have a recap of camera controls. Now, some of you have got iPhones and some of you have got smartphones. They vary so much that so each phone can be different, but basically this is the iPhone, and as you know, there's the photos and the camera and the gallery. And if you have trouble, I think most of you know how to work these. If you don't, then probably come along to some of Jim's courses later on and Peter Marshall's courses later on in the term if we have them. And then, so the iPhone layout, as you know, there's all the choices on the side: portrait, types of photos, videos, and timer, and flash, and of course this is the lens variant. So you can go from taking a selfie, or you can go to taking a photograph of people on the other side. My daughter, who takes a lot of photos, uses the portrait section, and there's a really good section. It's called Contour on iPhone. So if you click on portrait and then you dial around to the third one, it takes some lovely photos. Okay, the Samsung, very similar camera and a gallery. With the Samsung, if you want to take a photo really quickly, you just press the home button twice and the camera comes on. So this is Galaxy 9 here. And as I say, if you have trouble working out what all the dials are, just have a fiddle with them yourself. The more you fiddle with them and you go into different modes and shooting orders and recording videos, just do it. That's the most important thing. There's a thing called Bixby Vision there, which I didn't know about, but I checked it out, and it's basically the Siri and Cortana of the phone, and you can talk the phone into answering phone calls for you, or you can point the camera at an object and up will come some links, and you can actually click on the link and see what you're actually looking at, which sounds quite amazing. But most of the time, people use the phone for taking selfies. And what we're going to try and do today is to let you see how you can take better and more artistic photos rather than just straight on face shots. The first thing you should get is a small smartphone tripod. And you can see my smartphone is hooked into the tripod. Now, this is really great for family photos if you're putting your phone on timer so that the phone doesn't rock around, it sits steady. So you can work the timer by pressing the dial itself, or you can, I'll show you in a minute, you can use the sound control volume of the phone. And I would recommend it both with iPhones and Samsung phones, that rather than trying to press the little button for record or take the photo, that you use the volume controls. So if you hold the phone up like that, for example, and you want to take a photo, then you just press the sound control, and that actually takes a photo, which will lead us on to some other aspects. So the cost of these are $15 at JCars. The other thing that I find very good about it is, see where the little legs of the tripod are? If there's a crowd around, you can snap the legs together and hold it as a handheld tripod yourself. And if you get bumped, you're not likely to drop your phone. Now, this one here, as I said, you can use the volume control switch or even the volume control button on the earbud cable. Now, I just put this over the phone. That's the earbud cable for a Samsung. Paul showed me last night that the Apple ones are a bit different, but basically work the same way. You just change the volume on the phone and it on the cable, and it takes the photograph. Now, the other thing that's quite interesting, if you can buy attachable lenses for phones, and this is one I bought, and it makes the phone into a microscope, and I'll show you how it fits. Oh, and by the way, $6 from Kmart, but they're in the toy department. They're not in the photographic department. So all you do is that little device here over the lens, and that's what you see on your camera when you're looking through it. And if you'll notice, I've put the grid in there with the lines, and we'll go on to that in a minute about taking photos. And this is a photo I took of a leaf of an orchid plant that my wife grew the other day. So you may be interested in close-up of bugs or flowers or whatever, but I believe you can also get telephoto lenses, but I've never seen them and I don't know how good they are, but just be aware that they are around. Now, the other thing that is essential if you want to take good photographs is a tripod, and I bought this one from one of the convenience stores in Avalon for $20, and it extends out so it's probably 1.5 meters high, and then on top of that I can screw the iPhone or the smartphone holder off the other little one I showed you onto the top of this, and this is really great if you're serious about taking photographs, more so ones of nature rather than of home selfies. The little tiny one's very good at where we live here. I put the little one on this table and with the thing and press the timer, and then I get all my family to sit on the seat out the front of our house. Now, this is an interesting photo. Believe this, I took this in the Sudetenland in the Czech Republic last year, and this Chinese girl was walking around this place called Krispy Kremloff. Sounds like Krispy Kreme donuts, but a beautiful castle out of Prague. And she went around to all the really beautiful spots, and she had this remote selfie stand, and it had folded up into a little tiny thing that fitted in her handbag, and then in her hand she had a little device, and she could just take photographs of herself wherever she wanted to. I've looked at them online. I believe they're about $25 to $35, but just something to think about. Okay, so we're trying to get you to use your camera as an artistic tool. So we'll start with some basics. Now let's hope that this video works, but because we're having trouble before with it, but we'll see how Jim can tell me how it works if
Pixel photography world,
is it working, Jim?
saying that digital photography actually democratized photography.
It's a bit jerky, Greg.
Nothing else has actually really contributed to democratizing photography. A mobile phone. So in this video, we're going to give you a few tips on in front of the lens.
We'll just have to.
Could be smeared with oil,
We'll let it
body
run.
lotion, dust, etc., which will affect the quality of the image. Carry a small lens cleaning cloth, something that you would use to clean your specs, for example. Make sure that the glass is cleaned properly. The next one is go into the camera app and activate a 3x3 grid. And as we go along, I will explain to you how to use those grids effectively and compose your image. Last but not the least is holding the phone itself. I've seen lots of people holding the phone like this with one hand and trying to take a picture with the other. Obviously, you're going to end up with a shaken image. I recommend that you hold the phone with both hands exactly how you would hold a camera. Hold the hands and use either your thumb or your index finger to take the picture. And that will help you shoot a sharp image. Now let's move around and see if we can get good subjects to shoot. I just located two gentlemen sitting there, having their conversation after their morning walk. Let me walk towards them, take their permission, and see if I can get some update there. So I've asked for the permission, they've granted me the permission to shoot. So next thing is, when I look at them, very interesting faces. Looking at the place where they're sitting in, there's a lot of distraction in the background, but they have very interesting faces. If you can just walk till that wall there, yeah, please, thank you, please. So typically, when you pull out the camera, what will you do? You take out, okay, he will pose for you, and you take a picture, correct? But of course, you got the person. Now, since you've got an interesting face, the best way is to go close, fill the frame, and shoot. Now, I'm going to go close. Nice. Is right. I think if I make the background a little dark, this picture will improve. So I'm going to move them in front of this light. See, now look at the light and see the difference. Wonderful. To me, it is very nice. The next one is use a frame within the frame. So when I looked at it, I saw this interesting black note frame, and I thought I will frame him inside that. Okay, can you come here, please? In a situation like this, you will pick up your frame and pick up the camera and take a picture. But if you want to really make the picture look interesting, you can use the next direction, which is include this frame in our frame. So, sir, can you come inside, stand inside, come forward slightly? Yes, and face that way. So because he is framed, the picture suddenly got a different dimension. Very nice. Little bit of is my friend's son, and he's a young YouTuber. What would you like to give your details to our viewers?
My channel name is Lab Science World. It deals with all your questions about science, so please watch it.
Okay, wonderful. So he's going to be a hit in YouTube soon. So they were playing.
I'm going to stop that there. Could someone, Jim, did anything out of that? Oh, Paul, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Greg. Yep.
Did you get anything out of that?
Yeah, the sound was, it was okay to watch. It wasn't, it'll be a lot better when you get the NBN.
Okay, well, it will go on the website. I'll give you the actual link for the website. So I'm sorry if we've mucked you up there, but basically you could see that they try and use a grid, and you shoot into the grid as per you were shown there. So we'll go on to the next one. Right, now some tips in detail. We'll try and see how this one goes. Focus control. If it doesn't work, then if Jim or Paul could let me know.
It's pretty obvious that your photos and videos are better when they're in focus. But how do you do it with a smartphone? Let me show you how. It's as easy as a screen. Simply point at the object you want in focus. You'll see a box centered on your fingertip that focuses the camera on what you've selected. Pretty easy. Here's the cool part. If you hold your finger in place, some text pops up on the screen saying AVPALS lock. This locks the focus and exposure until you take your photo or stop recording your video. This ability to select focus is really helpful when you have an object close and one farther away. You can compose your shot with the closest object in focus and the background blurry, or vice versa. Now, tapping on the screen to focus is not a huge secret, but what most folks don't know is that you can change the focus while recording video. This is really helpful when you want to reveal something in the background of your shot, like this. When it's really critical to make certain your subject is in focus is when you're using your phone to shoot interviews.
The town is very quaint. It has...
Be sure to lock on to your subject's face, especially if they're moving around. Otherwise, your camera is likely to focus on the background, making their face look out of focus. So why does this work in some shots, but not others? Well, it depends upon the brightness of your scene. You see, your camera has to adjust something called the aperture. In low light, your camera opens up the aperture to let in as much light as possible. The result is a shallow depth of field. This function is easy to control with something like a DSLR, but not so easy with a smartphone. It's because they have a small image sensor. The result with the smartphone is most everything stays in focus. But if you exaggerate the distance between the objects, something close to the camera and something farther away, you can get some really nice results. This trick of adjusting your focus can make your shots look like they were captured by a pro.
How did that one go, Jim?
That was better.
This is the rule of thirds. Now, this is very important in taking shots.
Regardless of what you're shooting, I reckon the single most important tip for improving your composition is turn on the grid. This is an alignment system that actually places 4 lines on the screen, 2 vertically, 2 horizontally, splitting it up into 9 squares, 3 by 3. It looks like the kind of grid you get on a tic-tac-toe or noughts and crosses board. And what this lets you do is very quickly and easily see whether a subject is slap bang in the middle or slightly off center. It also lets you very easily check whether the horizon is squint or perfectly straight. Because believe me, if that horizon is just rotated even slightly, it can really spoil your pictures. So the first step, enable that grid. That grid is useful for just ensuring that the horizon is straight and the subject's in the middle. You can also use it to apply a compositional guide that's been used by artists for centuries called the rule of thirds. Now, like all rules, it can also be meant to be broken, but it's a great technique to get started in composition and placing things on the frame. So it works like this. As you know, that grid is dividing the picture into 3 stripes vertically, 3 stripes horizontally. Now, what's important are those lines going across and down, and in particular, where they cross each other. Now we've actually framed this shot with the rule of thirds. I'm at one of the intersecting points, which is where you're supposed to place the subject, but we've also placed one of our horizon lines on one of the horizontal lines. The promenade behind me is on that upper horizontal line, and the strong vertical of the I-360 tower is aligned with those vertical lines as well. But as I said earlier, where it really comes into its own is where those lines intersect, because that is where you're supposed to place the subject for it to be compositionally more appealing, to be more interesting to the human eye. It's just the way our brains work. So next time you're struggling with a composition, whether you're photographing someone's face or the top of a cup of coffee, or even the dominant building in a frame or a tree on a landscape, try positioning it using the rule of thirds where those lines intersect. Try all four of them, and you may find that one of them really just lights up for you. You think, yeah, that's great, that's exactly how I want the picture to look. But again, like all rules, if it doesn't work, break it, ignore it. It's there to be broken. Sometimes all you need for a nicer composition is to just fill that empty space on the shot with something. Maybe the sky's not particularly interesting, or maybe the ground, or in this case, the sea. So to liven up this view of the pier, all I'm going to do is step back a little bit and incorporate this wall into my shot. Now, as soon as you step back, you'll notice that it curves around. And you can use that curve to lead the eye into the splash as well if the time is right. These are called leading lines. They draw the viewer's attention to a certain part of the frame. Maybe it's a person I want to look at. Maybe it's part of a building. But they can also just be used as attractive sweeps and shapes in the frame. And to me, that's a lot more interesting than just and just getting a vast expanse of sea with nothing really much in there. Always be on the lookout for frames that make compositions more interesting. Shoot through them, and then you don't need to worry about a boring sky or ground. This donut sculpture is absolutely perfect with a hole in the middle. I can either go close to the hole and have that completely fill the frame there, or you could go and step back a bit and make a real feature of it, positioning the circle wherever you want on the frame. Also using the rule of thirds that we spoke about earlier to position it over one of those cross points of the lines. You can position that home towards one of the corners for a little bit more compositional attention. This is another example of using the environment around you to help frame your subject and give it more interest. In this case, the subject is the burnt out pier in the background. And I'm using these giant posts on either side of it to not only draw your attention to the subject in the middle, but also to fill some of that empty space on the left and right sides. It's very easy to do. Just position that main subject in the middle, and then move forwards or backwards to move those inwards or outwards until they fill the frame exactly how you want them. I'm also embracing shooting into the sun here. A lot of people will tell you it's a terrible technique, but I really like it, and it's also an environment if you want to create a silhouette effect. So what I'm doing is actually exposing to the sea. I'm tapping on the sea, those reflective highlights on the phone screen. The phone re-exposes the mountains, which in turn makes all of these shapes around you become absolutely black. It turns them into silhouettes, which makes them look particularly dramatic against the sea foreground. This is also really good at sunrise and sunset, especially when you've got lovely colour and clouds in the sky. So let's say you want to photograph a tall, thin tower like VAI 360 behind me here. Now that looks absolutely great when you're stood underneath it, looking up. It converges to a point, and you've got the reflective underbelly of the pod, reflecting the sea and the beach and the road around it. But from a distance, it really is just a point thing that just sounds inside. It can look quite dramatic, but at other times, I want to see something framing it. And this Victorian bandstand works perfectly for that. But for me, the success of a picture like this involves symmetry and getting it exactly square and exactly in the middle. So not only do I want that tower to be in the middle, but I want any details around it on the bandstand to be perfectly symmetrical and centered as well. And the way to do that is to look for clues either on the floor and tiling, or in this case, around the edge of the roof itself. You'll notice some wrought iron detailing, little kind of spikes coming down. Count how many there are across. Count until you get to the middle and line that up with your subject. Now, it's something that you probably wouldn't even notice if you just glanced at a picture. But believe me, it makes it much more satisfying subconsciously when you're viewing it. It shows that you put the effort in. It really does work.
I hope you got something out of that. If it's not clear, then it'll be on the website and you'll be able to look at it further. But that rule of thirds and having the grid on your phone really makes a lot of difference. So we're now going to have a go at leading lines and dynamic diagonals. This guy has some really good photo tips.
Diagonal lines in an image, be they real or imaginary, can add excitement to a picture that would otherwise be quite dull in a straightforward up and down, side to side sort of a view of the world. These fence posts that I'm leaning against right now are beautifully backlit, and if you got in tight on this diagonal that's running up across here, you can get quite a nice image. Because it's a diagonal, it's going to be running from the top left-hand corner of your screen here all the way down to the bottom right. This is what I call a naturally occurring diagonal, because it's natural, it's real, it's here, it's happening. But you can also make diagonals by moving yourself around and aligning different objects. For example, this stream flows from the top left-hand corner of the image down to the bottom right and makes a clear and obvious diagonal line through the image. And though it's not a real line like the stream was, there's a diagonal relationship going on here between the two main elements of this picture, the boat and the setting sun. I think it's pretty obvious there's an imaginary diagonal going on in this cityscape, and another between Jane's footprint and the rock. If they were simply side by side, they look really dreadful, kind of dull, boring, uninteresting. So much for the theory. Let's go and put all this into practice. In the shot we took over there with the fence posts, the ground is falling away like that, so the fence posts are following it. It's a real diagonal. It exists in reality. In the shot of the boat on the beach with the spread sun coming through the gap in the clouds, that is in reality. The sun is millions of miles away, whilst the boat is about from me to you away. By moving myself from side to side, I could choose whether I put the sun smack over the top of the boat, or to the right of it, or the left of it. If it was right above the boat, it would look pretty boring. This is all geometry, and you can move elements of your picture around within the frame by moving yourself. Look, we've got two benches here. We've got this one in the foreground with a little sapling growing. We've got another same-sized bench over there in the background with a full-sized tree sticking out of it. Right now, they're bunched up over on that side of the frame. But by moving the camera over to your left, notice how the one with the sapling is now starting to move to the right. So we've got one bench on the left of the frame, the other on the right. In fact, there's a bit of a diagonal going on, really, between the bushiness at the top of this one and the strength of the bench down on this side. By moving yourself, you can start to place things where you want to put them within the frame. Lorna, shoulders against the wall, feet forward, crossed, stomach in, rigid, woman. Can you just kind of look out onto the lake? There's some really nice light going on in there too. So just by zooming in onto Lorna and keeping the camera straight, I've got a nice diagonal portrait going on. It's a nice picture with a camera up on the right-hand corner of your screen, but by adding another element, you can begin to create a diagonal all of your own. Simple as that. The other thing you can do to add a bit of diagonal impact is to tilt your camera a bit. Now, Lorna learned how to teleport and got here before me. You're clever, eh? Lorna, do it straight out into the lake. Think warm thoughts. Let your shoulders relax. Now, if I take a shot of Lorna from here, just a straight arm up and down, it's a nice shot. Just giving the camera a little bit of a tilt off like that, I can just get a kind of slightly surreal, very otherworldly look to it. You can use tilts to make your own diagonals with cars, weddings, this one kind of has its own line, and even the Queen's best birds. When you put a couple of put tilts onto a picture, even something as seemingly uninteresting as a no parking sign, can actually work really, really well in a picture. Look, if I just take a picture of it straight, it's really rather dull, isn't it? If you tilt it just a little bit and think, because there are chimneys and a bit of sky going on in the background, it immediately becomes a bit more interesting, even something like that. But be subtle with your tilts. If you notice from the pictures that I've done, very few of the tilts go diagonally corner to corner like the natural diagonals do. If you overdo it, it can just look really rather rubbish. Let's overdo this one. Do you see what I mean? It doesn't really work, does it? So whether you're going to use diagonals, naturally occurring ones, whether you're going to start moving yourself around to get things to align the way you want them to, or you're going to start tilting your camera, diagonal impact in an image makes for exciting pictures.
So what I got out of that one that I use now is that when I take pictures of my grandchildren, rather than just doing face-on pictures, I actually get them to, you know, twist their body a little bit and have a diagonal line or lean up against the wall. And especially if you've got granddaughters, they really appreciate artistic photos of them. So we'll go on to reflections now. This doesn't last long. Taking panorama shots, you all have that on your camera when you want to take from the right to the left, or if you've got a group of people, you use the panorama setting and you can get more into the photo. And in the second part of this today, I'll show you how you can straighten those out. And this will be on the website just so that you know what size portraits you want. Because a lot of people get very confused about what size things they want. Most of us get the 6x4s, but some of them are better and you can make posters out of them and what have you. So this is going to be the end of the first part, which is smartphone photography. And if you are interested in knowing more about it, Joe Bradford's book, available online by Seco Books, is wonderful. It's got a lot of beautiful pictures and a lot of beautiful ideas. So I'm going to stop the share now. And what are we doing here? One is Screw It. I'll go through Screw It very quickly. It's just about shots that are taken, panoramic shots to get more into it. And then we'll get on to Snapseed. So Screw It corrects the lens distortion. So there's an example there where a photo has been taken, a big crowd of people over a large distance. So if you put it through Screw It, and it does cost about $6 for the app, it brings it out like that. And then there's another couple of examples. Say a curvature like that of people gathering, and it straightens it up. Now, I don't think any of us really need to use that unless you want to get high quality photographs for to keep for framing purposes. And here's the crowd of kids on the Opera House stage, and when you hit Screw It, it straightens it right out. So it does have some uses. Now this is the good one, Snapseed. Filters for iPhone and Android. It is free, and it basically gives you what Photoshop does, apart from being able to cut images out or replace images. It is just fantastic. So there's a small video here, and I hope it works.
Today I'm going to show you a few simple steps that will make any photograph or YouTube thumbnail that you're working with come to life and pop, and it's really easy to use. And to do this, we're going to use the Snapseed app, which is totally free. There are no ads, and it's available on both Android and iOS devices. And if you don't yet have this on your phone, you need to put this on your phone. For the tutorial that I'm going to do today, it is going to be a basic entry-level tutorial if you're not that experienced with Snapseed or you're not quite sure what to do with it. The first image that we're going to edit today is going to be a photograph of a woman, and the second image that we're going to work with is a photograph of food. But it doesn't matter what sort of image that you have. What I'm going to show you today applies to everything. And gamers, this applies to you too. You can take screenshots of your gameplay, walk through the steps that I'm about to show you, and make your images look a lot better. And this is the sort of thing that you want to do when you're using your gameplay images for your thumbnails. So let me open up Snapseed and show you how this is done. So when you open up the Snapseed app, you want to choose a photo out of your gallery to work with. The first photo we're going to work on is a portrait of a woman. So I'm going to tap on that and she's going to open up. Down here on the very bottom, you're going to see Looks, Tools, and Export. We're going to tap on Tools and it's going to load up a bunch of tools here. The first tool that we want to work with in this tutorial is in the top left and it's called Tune Image. You want to tap on that. Now as you push your finger on the screen and move it up or down, a menu is going to pop up. You're going to see brightness, contrast, saturation, ambience, highlights, shadows, and warmth. This is the main thing. This is the juice that's going to make your photo come to life. So the first thing that I'm going to do for this particular image, because it looks a little cold and it doesn't really pop, is I'm going to change the brightness and I'm going to go into ambience and I'm going to add some saturation and warmth. Now to add these, once you select one, you simply move your finger to the left or to the right. As you see here on the top, the brightness numbers are changing. So I'm going to add just a little bit of brightness. I'm going to press down and go to the next one, which is saturation. I'm going to move to the right and give it just a little bit of saturation. I'm going to hold down again, go to the next one, which is ambience. I'm going to go to the right again, add some ambience. I'm going to push down again. I'm going to go down to warmth. Go to the right. Now you see what's happening here as I change these. It's adding a lot of color to the image. So I'm just going to play with these a little bit until I find a look that I like. Now at any time along the way, if you're curious where you've started and where you're at now, on the top right, you can tap on this little icon here and it's going to show you where you started. So this is where we started and this is where we are now. You can see the image comes to life quite a bit. So I'm happy with this, and on the bottom right hand side, I'm going to tap on the check mark to save it. Now I'm going to go back down to Tools and I'm going to go down and find the portrait icon. I'm going to tap on that. Right away it's going to analyze the photo, and what it's going to do is it's going to add some smoothness to the skin and some whites to the eyes. So if I use two fingers to zoom in and then I go to the top right to see what it looked like before and after, this is before and this is after. You can see what it's doing to the face. It's really bringing some clarity to the face and some whites to the eyes. It's smoothing the skin quite a bit, and I like the way this looks. Now, if you want to adjust this, you're going to go down to the bottom center to the levels. You're going to tap on that and you can adjust any of this. So if you want more whiteness to the eyes, you can simply go to the left or to the right. If you want to smooth the skin out more, you choose that and go to the left or to the right. Now I'm going to zoom back out using two fingers, and I'm going to go to the top right again to see where we started. And you see what it's doing? It's putting a focus on her face and lighting it up and putting whiteness to the eyes, and I like this a lot. Now after each tool adjustment is saved, you can tap and hold on the image and it's going to show you where you started and where you are now. And you can see this is a drastic difference. And you can see the color that it's adding and it looks a lot better. The blues are coming out. And this is the sort of thing that you want to do with your pictures. And it doesn't matter if you're on Instagram or sending these out on Facebook or using them as a YouTube thumbnail. If you want to add life to your photos and really make them pop, this is how you do it. Now I'm happy with this, but I'm going to play with it just a little bit more. I'm going to go back down to Tools. And I'm going to scroll down to Vignette. I'm going to tap on that. And it's going to add a little bit of vignette around the edges. The first thing I'm going to do is come down to the inner brightness. And I'm going to brighten up the center just a little bit. Then I'm going to tap and hold. And I'm going to go to outer brightness. And I don't want such a heavy vignette, so I'm going to back it off just a little bit. And then I'm going to save it. Right? You can see this is quite a difference. This really makes the photo come to life. So I'm happy with this, and this is as far as we're going to go on this first tutorial. We'll get into more advanced things a little bit later, but for this, I just want to walk you through the basics. So we want to save this image by going to the bottom and tapping on Export. And here you'll get some options on how you want to save it. For this particular photo, I want to save a copy of the photo. So I'm going to tap on that. It's going to run through all the filters, then it's going to tell you that the photo is saved, and then you can go on and use the photo anywhere you want. Now, before I move on to the next image, I want to hear what you think about Snapseed or what your favorite photo editor is. Do you use Snapseed? Do you use PixArt? What do you use? Go down, leave a comment below. I read every single question and comment, and I reply to as many of them as possible. And when this video is over, I'm going to go down there and carry on this conversation and find out what your favorite photo editing apps are. Now, let's move on to the next image. Now, for the food photo, we're going to walk through the same process, but I'm going to show you how to highlight certain colors to add some more color to those individual colors. And boy, I just love Indian food. I'm just going to tell you that right now. So I'm going to go back to Tools down here in the bottom. I'm going to go to Tune Image. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little brightness. I'm going to come down. I'm going to add some saturation. I'm going to add some ambience. Look at that right there. Just ambience by itself. I mean, look at what that does to colors. This is the sort of thing that you want to do, especially with your YouTube thumbnails. So I'm going to add a little bit of ambience. I might add some warmth. Then I'm going to go down to the bottom right and I'm going to save it. I'm going to go to Tools. Then I'm going to come down and I'm going to find the Selective tool, which is right here. I'm going to tap on that. And the way this works is anywhere I tap, it's going to drop an anchor. So I'm going to use 2 fingers and zoom in, and I'm going to drop an anchor right here on this red area. So you see it's B. What that means is that's brightness. So if I tap and hold and move my finger, I can change the brightness, contrast, saturation, or the structure. I'm going to change the saturation of this red area. So that point is dropped, and I'm just going to simply move my finger to the right, and you see the red is changing. If I move it to the left, it goes the other way. So I'm going to crank this up because I want this red to pop. Now that this anchor is set and the saturation is there, I'm going to hit the check mark and save it. I'm going to zoom out a bit, and I'm going to move it around. I'm going to change the color of this. So I'm going to go back, Selective. I'm going to drop that right there, go back to saturation. I'm going to crank that up and save it. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to crank up the greens on the broccoli. I'm going to go back, Selective, drop that right on a green. I'm going to come in and change the saturation again. And that's going to change all of the greens that match the color of the greens that I've selected with this anchor. Look at that. Before and after. You see how these colors are starting to pop? It looks great, doesn't it? So I'm going to do another thing here. I'm going to zoom into one of the greens here in the corner. I'm going to do another Selective. I'm going to tap on that. Back to saturation again. I'm going to add some color, just a little bit. And I'm going to save that. So each thing that I'm doing, it's selectively adding more color to the image. Now, I love how this looks. I think this looks fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. I'm going to go down to Export, and I'm going to save it. So it's really that easy with just those few basic steps to really make your photos come to life. But there's something that I want you to keep in mind. I use a lot of saturation in these images and a lot of ambience, but it's really easy to go too far. The last thing you want people to do is say, oh, that picture's been photoshopped, because that's what they're going to say. They're not going to say it's been snapseeded, because nobody's saying that. Are we saying that? Is anybody saying snapseeded? No? And I know you've all come across those pictures. They just looked bizarre and they looked fake. So don't overdo it with the saturation and ambience. You want it to look real. You want it to look alive. You want it to look eye-catching. You just don't want to cross that line. So use those sparingly. Now, this was a very basic and entry-level tutorial. If you want to get into more intermediate things or more advanced things, be sure to leave a comment down below.
So yeah, as you can see, Snapseed is just a fabulous thing. And the filters, sometimes color photos look great, and especially with pictures of people, they look good in black and white as well. So Snapseed, which is available free for Apple devices from the App Store and for Samsung from the Play Store. So what we used to do at Newport when we did this thing, at halftime we had homework, and we got people to take a lot of portrait shots and explore them, take selfies and experiment, take creative photos, take abstract photos, take landscape photos framed by building. As we can't do that here, I just ask you, if you want to do more with photography, is to just experiment and ask your family what you think of them. So I'm going to stop the share now, and we'll unmute you. And if anyone's got any questions, please go ahead.
So ready to wave your hands at Sherry.
Oh, sorry. This is a really simple question, and I expect everybody knows the answer. How do I find the grid on my photos, on my, if I'm in the camera or in pictures. I'm sorry, if I'm in.
No, you find it in when you press the photo, so you're going to take a photo, and then there should be a little cog there which is settings, and you go into the settings. You might have to, I'm not sure what you've got, but you might have to fiddle around. Yeah, well, you have to fiddle around and find the settings, unless Jim, I don't have an iPhone, so anyone know exactly where they are?
Right. Yeah,
I'm in the photo.
okay, Sherry, I can answer the question.
Okay.
To turn on the grid on an iPhone, you have to go into the settings app.
Okay.
Scroll down until you get to the camera settings.
Yeah.
And then you'll find in there's a switch that says grid.
Okay. So do I have to do that every time?
No, because it's in settings, from then on it will be turned on when you start the camera.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
I've just checked it and it's turned on in my camera.
Okay, I'll go into that. And I was very impressed with Snapseed.
It's wonderful.
I'm going to see what I look like if I have a facelift.
You can have so much fun with it for nothing.
Thank you.
Helen had a question.
Yes, with the grid, is it the 3x3 is the best grid?
Yes.
Yes, it is. But you have to learn to line it up, as you saw in the video, well, part of the video. You line the lines on the grid up with a horizontal or vertical line in the shot you're going to take.
Good, thanks, Greg.
More questions?
That was really good. Yeah.
Gordon. Gordon has a question.
Yes, on your settings, I've got ZSL. Do you know what that stands for? Android phone.
On Android. No, Greg?
What's the setting called?
ZSL.
I'm sorry. What I suggest you do is get Mr. Google and just say, what does that mean on an Android phone?
Fine, thanks.
Any more questions? I don't see any hands up at the moment.
Well, thank you. And I'm sorry again about the quality of the videos, but I'll get them to Paul. And if you want to look at them again, you can go online tomorrow and AVPALS.com and have a look and experiment. That's what all I can say is you just spend your time. Sherry, another question?
Oh, no. Oh, dear. I just want to say thank you. I found grid in my settings. Thank you.
That's good.
All right.
All right. If you want to see Paul.